Aizen Sosuke, one of the most iconic anime villains of all time. Even after all these years, he's still such a memorable, fun character. But here's the thing, for all his popularity and memorability, I can't help but wonder, did Aizen truly live up to his potential as a villain? Did Kubo make the right calls in crafting Aizen's story arc, his character development, and ultimately his defeat? As the main antagonist of Bleach, Aizen's presence spans over more than 200 manga chapters. He's the ultimate puppet master and mastermind, the primary threat that drives the narrative forward. Getting a character like that right isn't just important, it's crucial. It's almost as vital as nailing the protagonist, Ichigo, himself. And that's what I'm going to be discussing in today's video, both the good and the bad of Aizen, and whether or not Kubo ultimately succeeded with his character. Let's just ignore the uncomfortable possibility that this video was also a part of Aizen's plan, and let's jump straight in. I'm going to first talk about what I liked about Aizen before I talk about what wasn't done so well. The best part about Aizen is undeniably the sheer aura and charisma he exudes. I mean, just look at this. What a smooth criminal. On a more serious note, Aizen is a very intriguing character. He's the perfect balance of charisma and menace, exactly what you want in a major antagonist. First impressions are everything in storytelling, and Aizen really nails his debut. It's such a shocking moment when we first get the reveal, and the way he dismantles the captains, who represent the pinnacle of power in the series at this point, through a blend of overwhelming force and illusory mind games, is a narrative sucker punch that really leaves the readers reeling. I find him so chilling and menacing in these scenes as well. Even though he speaks courteously to everybody, you really see how ruthless and uncaring he is, stabbing Hinamori for really no reason, and then taunting Hitsugaya and the other captains. This juxtaposition of politeness and brutality makes Aizen feel really deeply unsettling, and it makes us wonder, what is he truly capable of? And of course, the culmination of his introduction is the iconic moment when he stops not only Ichigo's Bankai, but even his theme music with a single finger. Another effortless domination that just leaves you wondering, how is he ever going to be beaten? At least that's how I felt. And you feel a sense of hopelessness, which is really what you want when it comes to the big bad of the series. In short, Aizen's introduction is probably some of the best writing we see in all of Bleach. It leaves you in awe of his power, intrigued by his motives, and maybe just a little bit enamored by his villainous charm. The other good thing I want to highlight about Aizen is his Zanpakuto Kyoka Suigetsu, and its power, complete hypnosis. Now, this is a little bit of a double-edged sword, not literally, as there are also some problems with it, which I'll talk about in the second part of this video. All I'll say for now is that I really like the concept of Aizen using illusions to manipulate his opponents and pull clever tricks. I think in general, illusion-based powers are criminally underutilized in fiction, not just anime, but fiction as a whole. I get that it's really difficult to write around them, but I do think if they were given more love, it would lead to some really interesting and engaging moments in stories. Gin describes this power of Aizen's as terrifying, and I 100% agree with him. Unfortunately, this is where the good things end. You'll probably be able to look at the video length after this has been edited and realize that there will be a lot more bad than good, and I do wish there was more good. But anyway, let's move on to the second part of the video, what I think doesn't work about Aizen. Let's start with what I think is one of the most glaring issues with Aizen's character, his motivations. Or should I say, the vague hints of motivation that we're given throughout the series. This might sound minor, but for the main villain who's supposed to be driving the conflict of the plot, it's actually really important to get this right. A strong motivation is what's key in elevating a villain beyond a generic, mundane character. I actually spoke about this a bit in my video on the Joker, so I won't repeat it too much here, but in short, a good villain is someone who really challenges the protagonist beyond just the realm of physical might. they challenge their worldview or their philosophy. If you want to hear more about this, definitely check out the Joker video. But returning to Aizen, whilst he's undeniably an absolute physical powerhouse, what's actually driving his actions is left pretty ambiguous and kind of ill-defined. I mean, if we look back to when he first leaves Soul Society, he tells Ukitake that nobody stands atop the world and that he wants to fill the power vacuum. Okay, this is fine, I guess, but it's a pretty generic motivation. It's kind of what you'd learn on your first day in villain school. I want ultimate power. It doesn't really give us any real insight into Aizen as a character, nor does it create any meaningful conflict beyond stop the bad guy from getting stronger. But later on, as he's being sealed away, Aizen does hint at something potentially a lot more interesting. He screams at Urahara about the Soul King and asks him how can he stand to submit to that thing, to which Urahara responds very cryptically and kind of seems to agree with Aizen, except for the fact that he considers the existence of the Soul King a necessary evil, or a necessary linchpin as he calls it. And you know what? Okay, I like this. I can get on board with this motivation. Who or what is the Soul King? And why does Aizen hate him so much? This is good. This is intriguing. But it's never explained. Kubo just dangled this juicy plot hook in front of us, only to rip it away. I know in the 1000-Year Blood War arc, we get more of an explanation about the Soul King and his purpose in the world, but we never get a resolution for Aizen specifically. Why he hated the Soul King so much, or even how he met the Soul King in the first place, and found out enough about him to hate him. And then the final kicker when it comes to Aizen's motivations, Ichigo, out of completely nowhere, tells us that apparently Aizen is secretly very lonely, and this subconscious desire for equals or true companions was so pronounced that the Hulgyoku actually picked up on it and it contributed to his defeat. Now, I do see what Kubo was going for here. It's an attempt to add some depth to Aizen's character, to make him more than just a power-hungry megalomaniac. And conceptually, it's not a bad idea, but here's where it falls flat. This so-called loneliness just comes completely out of nowhere. There's no foreshadowing, no hints dropped along the way. We never see Aizen struggling with isolation or yearning for connection. It's just Ichigo suddenly claiming this after their fight, and we just have to take his word for it. Even worse still, the supposedly crucial character insight is never acknowledged again. Not by other characters, not by the narrative, and not even by Aizen himself. It's just a throwaway line that I guess is meant to be profound and a significant revelation about Aizen. But to me it just feels cheap and unconvincing. Funnily enough, in this very same series, the concept is explored a lot more convincingly with Stark, the Primera Espada. And a non-Bleach example that also comes to mind is Gojo Satoru from Jujutsu Kaisen. If you're interested in hearing my thoughts on Gojo and his loneliness, check out the other video on my channel about Gojo and Sukuna. In the end, Aizen's motivations feel like missed opportunities. We're left with a villain who's undeniably charismatic and intimidating, but whose inner drives remain frustratingly opaque. It's a textbook case of style over substance, and it ultimately weakens the impact of Bleach's central conflict. Let's move on now to the next thing I want to talk about with Aizen, which is that he's just too powerful, which is what you want in your big bad, but the problem here specifically really is to do with his Zanpakuto. Kyoka Suigetsu is conceptually such a cool idea. Like I said at the start of the video, I really do feel like illusion-based abilities are underutilized in fiction, but Kubo goes way too far with Aizen. I mean seriously, let's run this down. It's a perfect, inescapable, instant-use manipulation of all your senses. It only requires a one-time activation, so if you see it once, you're under its spell forever. And its only weakness, you need to physically touch the sword's hilt before Aizen casts an illusion. Good luck with that. If we look at the one major fight Aizen has in the series, which is the Fate Karakura Town arc, I feel like Kyoka Suigetsu creates a narrative black hole that just sucks all the tension out of the fight. For all we know, the heroes could have been fighting thin air the entire time. Aizen could have turned off their senses and ended them without breaking a sweat. And okay, sure, We know that they're probably not going to win because Ichigo is the main character and he needs his hero moment, but still, it's beyond frustrating to watch a drawn-out fight where one character essentially has God mode enabled. What I find even more confusing is that no one seems to acknowledge just how broken Kyoka Suigetsu is. You'd think the Shinigami would try and make a plan to counter its effects, or nullify it somehow, or work around it. I mean, you literally have Mayuri on the team, who is the perfect character to work on this, but instead, the Shinigami just decide to rush Aizen and completely play into his hands, with Hitsugaya even being manipulated into stabbing Hinamori through the heart. I still don't know how much of the fight we saw was actually real. It's like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands, and I find it really frustrating seeing the characters be so foolish. Even Aizen kind of berates them for this, telling them, when did you think I wasn't using Kyoka Suigetsu? Why would they just assume that he wasn't? It might have been interesting if Aizen himself was physically weak, and he compensated for this with his illusions. But no, Kubo decided to make him unbelievably powerful on top of this hack ability. It's like giving Superman the ability to control minds. It's just overkill, it's just not needed. If we look at all the other illusion-based Zanpakuto, they all have a reasonable weakness or drawback. Sakanade only works if you can smell the gas it releases. Torzon's Bunkai has a defined range, and Rose's Bunkai needs to be continuously heard to apply the illusion. And in each of these cases, the effects aren't permanent and need to be reapplied with each fight. Aizen's is the only exception. For some reason, it's just straight up orders of magnitude better than every other Zanpakuto sense manipulating ability. And what this overpowered ability does is it creates a domino effect, plot holes and contradictions that destabilizes the entire story. The heroes never find a practical way to counter Kyoka Suigetsu. Aizen just decides to stop using it. I guess you can maybe chalk it up to overconfidence. But really, it feels more like Kubo wrote himself into a corner which he couldn't find his way out of. Like, for example, Aizen not releasing the sword in front of Ichigo, which I think also just doesn't make any sense. I get that he was interested in Ichigo's evolution and perhaps wanted him to become stronger, but he'd been making preparations for his plans for centuries. He had contingencies for everything possible, creating an Arrancar specifically designed to counter the Captain Commander, and even going so far as to place a Kido spell to guard the back of his head, just on the off chance that somebody caught him unawares. Even if he wasn't expecting to use it, why would he not release Kyoka Suigetsu in front of Ichigo, just in case the one person he was actively encouraging to become stronger ever posed a threat to him? If he had, he straight up would have won the final fight, as he could have had Ichigo fire off Mugetsu in a random direction, after which he would have lost his powers. For some reason, the thought never crosses his mind, even when he realizes that he's losing the fight. The fact that we still haven't seen Aizen's Bunkai, despite him undoubtedly having one, speaks volumes to me. Kubo knew he'd created a monster with the Shikai, and that any Bunkai would either be anticlimactic or completely break the story's conflict. This type of issue isn't unique to Bleach, but it's particularly egregious here. Kubo has a really bad habit of writing characters with such broken abilities that it becomes impossible to create satisfying conflicts around them, and we the audience are left to pick up the pieces of these contradictions, wondering why Aizen didn't just use his godlike powers to win instantly. Moreover, such overpowered abilities are less engaging for readers. Limitations are what make conflicts exciting. We want to see characters overcome obstacles, work around weaknesses, and cleverly use their abilities. A power that solves every problem effortlessly is not only uninteresting, but it creates the inescapable problem of how it can be overcome. In the end, Kyoka Suigetsu becomes less of a clever plot device and more of a narrative crutch, one that ultimately hobbles the story it was meant to support. Let's now move on to the final flaw in Aizen's character I wanted to talk about, which is also possibly one of the most memed anime moments in existence, when he tells Ichigo that his whole life and everything leading up to their conflict was according to his plan. I'm really sorry to keep name dropping my other videos here, and I promise this is the last time. It's just that as I'm writing this script, I keep realizing I've already spoken about many of these issues. If you've seen my video on the problem with smart characters in fiction, you'll probably know where I'm going with this, but don't worry if you haven't, I'll summarize it quickly. The short of it is that if you want us to be convinced a character is hyper smart, you really need to show it and not tell it. And unfortunately, Aizen is the epitome of simply telling us that somebody is smart and expecting us to take it at face value. Because the idea that Aizen manipulated pretty much everything in Ichigo's life up to this point is just so absurd that it's hard to put into words. And even if we accept it as fact, it completely destroys Ichigo's agency as a character, the main character of the series. Every struggle, victory, defeat, and decision, every moment of his life, apparently was just the result of a puppet master pulling on his strings. It undermines the entire narrative structure of Bleach. If everything was Aizen's plan all along, then what was the point of all the struggles and challenges we've watched Ichigo overcome? What meaning do his relationships and growth have if they were all predetermined by a villain's scheme? This approach to Aizen's character doesn't make him seem intelligent. It makes the writing seem lazy.
That's just lazy writing.
True intelligence in characters is demonstrated through their actions, their ability to adapt to unexpected situations, and their capacity to outmaneuver others in ways that make sense within the established rules of the world. What's particularly frustrating is that there were plenty of other opportunities to showcase Aizen's intelligence in far more believable and engaging ways. His manipulation of Soul Society, his creation and use of the Irenka, and even his understanding and exploitation of the Hogyoku. All of these could have, and were, used to demonstrate his intellect without resorting to the "I secretly planned everything" trope. And with that, we've discussed all the key issues I had with Aizen's character. After talking for a bit longer than I thought I would, we're left with the big question: was Aizen a good villain? On the positive side, Aizen's introduction and initial portrayal were masterful. His reveal as the true antagonist was a genuine shock, and he felt genuinely disturbing and unsettling. Aizen's charisma, his balance of civility and cruelty, and his seemingly unbeatable power did successfully create an aura of menace that few anime villains can match. And above all, he's entertaining, and a forceful presence in practically all his appearances. He exudes power and charisma in a way that's undeniably captivating. However, the negatives ultimately outweigh these positives. Aizen's motivations remained frustratingly vague and underdeveloped, robbing him of the depth that truly great villains possess. And the attempts to retroactively add complexity through Ichigo's loneliness theory felt hollow, no pun intended, and unearned. His powers were so overwhelming that they paradoxically made him less interesting as an antagonist, removing the possibility of genuine, engaging conflict, and creating plot holes and questions when he inexplicably chooses not to use these godlike abilities. Aizen had all the ingredients to be one of the all-time great anime antagonists, and probably many people still consider him to be. He is undoubtedly memorable and iconic. For me though, he fell short of his potential. He is a testament to the importance of balance in character writing, between power and vulnerability, between mystery and clarity, between telling and showing. In the end, Aizen is like his own illusions, impressive at first glance, but unable to stand up to closer scrutiny. He's a villain who captured our imagination, but ultimately left us wanting more depth, more consistency, and more genuine conflict. While I don't consider him to be a perfect villain, I do think that examining his character and the missteps that Kubo made can teach us valuable lessons about what makes a truly great antagonist and what pitfalls to avoid in creating one. Anyway, that's it for today's video. What do you all think? Do you agree with me or disagree with me? What do you think about Aizen as a character? I'm always interested to hear what you all think, and I always do my best to reply to everybody who comments on my videos. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video and would like to see more, please do like and subscribe, as it does help me and the channel out. And I'll see you all next time.